what would you say have been some of the significant benefits or value that you've gained from being involved as serving professionally?
Definitely the first one is helping to grow my network and just name recognition. The second one would be generating new opportunities, whether that's been through new research projects and grants or writing papers. The third one, and maybe I won't realize this till much later, but I hope in the long run.
Have you ever wondered what sets successful professionals apart from the rest? Here's a surprising fact for you. Professional service can be the key to advancing your career. And in this episode, I'll be talking with Kristin Sample-Lord, PhD, PE. We'll be talking about the significance of professional service in advancing your career. Kristin is an associate professor and assistant department chair at Villanova University. Dr. Sample-Lord will be sharing valuable insights on how engaging in professional service can open up new opportunities. It can advance skills and also elevate your professional profile. I'm your host, Jared Green, and I'm excited to be bringing you another episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast. But before we get started, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor for today's episode, that being PPI, a Kaplan company.
PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
All right, Dr. Sample-Lord, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for carving out some time for us to be here. And it would be helpful if you could start by telling our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what inspired you to focus on geotechnical and geoenvironmental engineering. Like, how did you get to where you are now?
You mean all kindergartners don't know what geotechnical engineering is?
Not all.
Well, I'm originally from Massachusetts,
Okay.
and in high school, I knew I wanted to pursue a career that helped keep people safe and protected the environment, but I didn't know exactly how or what types of careers I would enjoy the most that let me do that. And then there was this one day in high school where my physics teacher got permission for me and another student to skip the whole day of school and instead go with him into Boston for the day to attend a conference for women in engineering.
Wow.
And that's where I first found out about civil engineering and what it was. And I realized that I was interested in that career path. I could help people and protect the environment through civil engineering. So I went to Northeastern University for a bachelor's degree in civil and environmental, which is only about 30 minutes from home. And then while at Northeastern, I had a great soil mechanics class. I mean, all soil mechanics classes are great. That's why we're here, right? But that's when I discovered that I was most interested in geotechnical engineering. And then after graduating Northeastern, I worked for a short time and then went to Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado for my master's. And while I was at Colorado State, I focused in geoenvironmental engineering, which I hadn't known that much about before I went there. And I finished that, finished my master's. I went to work for a few years in consulting for geotechnical and environmental services, got my professional engineering license, and then this opportunity came up to return to Colorado State for my PhD. And I really enjoyed my time in Colorado, and I thought maybe I want to teach someday. So I jumped at that chance, went back for my PhD, and when I finished my PhD, I moved back to the East Coast to start a faculty position here at Villanova University. And I have been here and having a great time ever since.
That's fantastic. So, one could say you fell into it, but it kind of looks like life was kind of taking you in this direction. And I love that you got the professional experience, got the engineering license, then got the PhD, advanced studies. And I have to imagine that as a professor, you're bringing very practical experience to the classroom. So that's very valuable.
I try.
Excellent. So what are some of the service and leadership roles that you hold in geotechnical professional organizations, and how did you first get involved with these roles? Is this something that was required as a part of your, professorial responsibilities? Like, how'd you get there?
Well, I definitely didn't know that much about professional service and organizations outside your own institution before I started my academic position, or at least before I started my PhD. Okay. And I found so far, and this, professional organizations outside your own organization are such a great way to meet people, discover opportunities, make an impact. And many of these organizations, because it's largely volunteers, right, doing professional service, they're usually very excited to have new members, especially young members.
Yep.
So if you're interested, it's usually not that hard to then get involved, right? And I actually have over, my career thus far have evolved in my professional service roles, definitely accumulated more, and through sort of like natural leadership succession, have sort of moved up in responsibilities. And so right now I do have several professional service leadership roles. So for example, I'm president-elect of the International Geosynthetic Society of North America, and I'll transition to president in the spring.
Nice.
I'm a board
Congrats.
member. Well, I'm a board member of the U.S. University's Council on Geotechnical Education and Research, although most people just say USugar. For the ASCE Geo Institute, the Geoenvironmental Technical Committee, I'm a communications coordinator. And the worldwide level, we have ISSMGE, right, the International Society of Soil Mechanics and Geotechnical Engineering. And they have different technical committees. So I'm the secretary for the Environmental Geotechnics Committee. So these are different committees that I've become involved with at the local and national, international level, which is one type of service. And then other types of service that I have gotten involved in is conference organizing. So for example, I am a co-chair of the 13th International Conference on Geosynthetics, which will be in Montreal in 2026, every 4 years. And I'm the first woman to be a chair of those conference series. Yeah, so that's very exciting. And that's a totally different type of service role, again, as you know.
Yeah.
And then there's things like service for scholarly journals, and so I'm an associate editor for a few different journals. And these are all different types of roles, but I would say for most of them, the way I initially got involved is there was somebody on the committee in the organization that encouraged me to join or come to just one meeting. That seems to be how they start, right?
Yeah.
And then you show up and you're active and you kind of start to take on these lower level roles. Maybe you just lead a subcommittee, you update the web page. And then a lot of times, just over time, those roles evolve and you end up as part of the leadership.
Wow. Now I have to ask, because you're doing a lot. Like, do you have like a 25th hour that you're keeping secret, or an 8th day of the week? Like, how do you get it all done? There's a lot going on there.
Maybe we'll talk about that later. There is definitely a thing as doing too much service, and I've tried to apparently find where that boundary is, and reel back a little. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate the service that you're providing. You're making a difference in the industry and in the lives of a lot of people. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now, when you think about, the involvement in a team, and especially an involvement at work, how important do you think sponsorship is from senior colleagues as it relates to advancing somebody's career in geotechnical engineering?
Oh, it's so important. All those roles I just mentioned, I'd say 99% of them came about because of sponsorship, because of a senior colleague who said, hey, you know who I bet would be good for that? And then they said my name, or they brought me into it. And, there's all these perceived barriers that I had or still have for new roles that, I can't do that role, or I can't try to be on that committee. I'm too intimidated. I'm not confident enough. But the more established folks on those committees, they're the ones that nominate me. They're the ones that encourage me. They're confident I can be successful. And so they convince me I can do it. And then I end up finding out, okay, yeah, I can. And even if I can't, I've got all these people to lean on who've done it before to help me out. So I'd say sponsorship is huge, particularly for these sort of leadership roles and opportunities on the professional service side. And I would say it goes back even to that high school physics teacher, right?
Yeah.
And taking the initiative to take us out of school for the day and bring us to this Women in Engineering conference.
I love it. I love it. It's great. So many times I hear people, they'll say that, I'm going to give back when I have time, or I'm going to volunteer when I know I'm ready. And a lot of times it's like, you just need somebody else to say, no, I think you're ready, and we're going to figure it out. We're going to set you up for success. So that's really encouraging, for sure. For sure. Now, what would you say have been some of the significant benefits or value that you've gained from being involved as serving professionally?
It's interesting because sometimes those benefits aren't immediately apparent, right? Or they take a little longer time to come about, or for you to realize that they were due to professional service involvement. I'll keep this answer short because I think we might talk about a little bit more about later, but I think it would be three real things that I have found where I've gained value from being involved in professional service. Definitely the first one is helping to grow my network and just name recognition. Seems simple, but it can be hard to grow and build on your own if you don't get out there and get involved. The second one would be generating new opportunities, whether that's been through new research projects and grants, or writing papers, or collaborating to develop new classes. Definitely new opportunities have come about through professional service. And then I think the third one, and maybe I won't realize this till much later, but I hope in the long run, one of the values of professional service is that it expands my impact on the field and ultimately society.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. That's one that we won't see for some time, right? But that's great. Something to look forward to. And again, we don't do this for those reasons, but it's nice that you can have that type of, kind of like added plus, right? You're going in to serve, but you're also making things better for others. And what would you say is your involvement? Sorry, let me say it differently. How is your involvement in professional organizations help you grow your network, and then also recognition within the geotechnical community? And you talked about this a little bit with like the name recognition. You have a hyphenated name, so your name kind of stands out, right? So, but how does that help?
Well, it's a hyphenated name, and I've talked about this with Brad Keeler from Geo Institute before too. It's a hyphenated name, and it's like a really cool Geotech hyphenated name, right?
It really
it's like
is,
the
right?
Sample-Lord, So, if you need the best samples ever, apparently, you just got to contact me.
There's nothing boring about your name, right?
No, and then I know this is an aside, but I had the last name Sample, and I was a Geotech, and I thought, I can never change my name. And then I met my husband, and I was like, well, okay.
That's pretty cool, right? That's a pretty nice addition.
Might level up.
Yeah.
But aside from just purely having a very geotechy hyphenated name, for networking and name recognition, so for networking, I would say that the way that professional service has helped me build and diversify my network is when I'm on committees, oftentimes they're not specifically in an area of geoenvironmental engineering that I work in. They're a bit broader within the field. And so I end up at a table with people I normally wouldn't be working with or collaborating with, or in the same technical session. And that might be because they have different focus areas, or organizations are very different, or they're just in different physical locations, right? So I get to meet so many more people and a much more diverse network of people. And sometimes those people know other people, and it's those little side conversations before and after committee meetings or whatever it is that helps a lot. On the name recognition, I know for a fact that being involved in professional service has definitely increased my name recognition, at least for me personally, because I got proof of this. For example, I was at a conference a few months ago, and I ran into a very well-known senior colleague in the field, and we were chatting in the expo hall. And he said something that really stood out. He said, and this is actually what he said, with this big smile on his face. He said, Kristin, I feel like I see you everywhere now. We are so proud of everything you're doing. And when he said seeing me everywhere, it was mostly due to all these service roles, right? There had been recent social media about a conference that I was helping to lead, and some emails from organizations about a panel I was on, or outreach activities that we were working on. And so that wasn't presenting my research or, winning the best paper prize. This was all the service stuff. And that's where he was seeing me everywhere. And it was really increasing name recognition. So that's my proof, right? It's definitely made an impact for me. And I'll definitely remember that moving forward, about how all this professional service, again, not why we do it, but as a side benefit, has definitely created value in my career.
That's fantastic. And I think the more, we look at the industry, we see it especially what we do for geotechnical and geoenvironmental, it's a pretty small group of people, even across the world. And everybody kind of knows everybody when you start, looking at the connections and degrees of separation. But can you share a specific opportunity or project that came your way as a result of your professional service involvement?
Yeah. So there's a few. Probably one of the most relatable examples that I could give is I had recently joined the Geo Institute Technical Committee for Geoenvironmental Engineering. Okay. I'm a brand new professor. And there's people in the committee who I know their names, I've seen them present, but they don't really know me that well yet. And you chat before the meetings and after. And I was chatting with some more senior colleagues about things they were working on. And I was talking about what I was working on. And just in that side chat, we realized there was this opportunity for collaboration, leveraging some sites they'd been looking at and the type of research I did. And so we followed up after that. Again, had nothing to do with the purpose of the committee meeting, right? It was just a side chat. And we applied for some seed money through a grant to get some data that turned into a bigger project, which turned into a bigger project. And now we've had multiple conference presentations and papers on this project that we worked on, and we're about to submit a journal paper. And it all came through these informal interactions at a committee meeting originally. And just one thing led to another. So I think those types of things happen a lot, maybe more than we realize.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for those that are listening or, those that are watching, pay attention. I mean, the reality is that there are so many of these opportunities and they're looking for new volunteers. And, if you're not curious, you should be curious about what could happen if you're giving back the way Professor has. So let's see, it's important for your primary workplace to support, right? You can't do any of this if they don't support and if they don't see value in your active involvement. But how do you navigate that? Like, how do you navigate that?
I mean, I can speak from the academic side. And as you said, it's very important, right? One nice thing perhaps about being in academia is often faculty are evaluated for annual reviews and promotions based on 3 categories. It's teaching, research, and service, how people want to interpret that. So there's kind of already this expectation that you were doing at least some professional service outside of your institution. And that's valued as far as being considered in your reviews and your promotions. There is a line though, right? Service is valued to an extent for faculty, depending on your position. Research and teaching pretty much always come first, and you should be doing service, but not so much service that's at the detriment to your research and teaching. So that is a little bit of a balancing act. But I do feel fortunate in that, I'm at an institution where my colleagues, my bosses, they know what professional service is, and they understand how it works, the types of commitments that might come up, and they can offer advice too about being strategic about professional service. So I agree, it's absolutely critical that your organization values professional service, but I would add not only values it, but they understand professional service and that your colleagues are also involved in professional service. So if there's something that you have to go do, perhaps during typical working day hours for a committee meeting or something, that they understand the value in doing that.
That's so true. And I would say that, in industry, it's very similar. It's like it's important. It comes up in your evaluations, but depending on where you are in the industry and also size of company or size of organizations, you may have more or less flexibility. And then, you have to remember what your full-time job is. So you can't do all that and then not do your project work or not teach your classes, right? Or lead research. So it's very important to get that balance. And talking about, managing the balance, this balance between the professional service, the work responsibilities, family, if you have family, personal hobbies, like what advice would you give to others that are trying to, do all the things?
I thought you would have the answer for me. I wish I had that answer.
I'm here taking notes. That's why you're on the show, because I need to know. No, I have not figured it out. I'm hoping you did, because you're doing a lot.
Yeah, and I don't know that anybody has. In fairness, for people to be fair to themselves. And I do have 2 kids. I have 2 elementary school kids, and they're involved in all the extracurriculars. So there's many different ways that we're pulled. So I wish I had this answer. And so I don't have an answer. I have two things that I've been trying to do to help me balance work responsibilities, professional service, especially in light of, as you pointed out, like sort of all these leadership roles that have come about at the same time, and family. And so what I've been trying to do, it's somewhat successful for me so far, maybe it doesn't work for other people, is it's very easy to feel pulled in so many different ways and get stressed out about, I have all this professional service stuff I have to do, but then all this research grants I need to be writing, and I'm teaching, and all my kids' soccer games. And what I've been trying to do is be very mindful, at least on the professional service and work responsibilities, in scheduling dedicated work times for different responsibilities. Now, like sometimes that just goes out the window, but I try, and even if it changes and I don't keep that time, just the act of scheduling a time of, I'm going to work on some professional service tasks during this time period, and I'm going to work on writing up some of my research papers during this time period. It at least relieves some of that stress of not having like weigh on my mind that I got to work on this or that. I could say, no, schedule the time to do that. I can mentally put it aside for now and just sort of focus on what's the priority at the time. Yeah. But it also lets me see a little bit about how I'm spending my time, right? Like if I really have to be blocking a lot of time to do a lot of service relative to research, then I know that I need to rebalance my priorities. So I'm trying to do that. That's kind of like my more recent approach. We'll see how long that lasts.
Excellent. No, I love it.
And I'd say the other thing I'm trying to do, again, which is I'm working on, is trying to be better about communicating responsibilities that I have for work or service or family to the people in my life in each of those realms. Because, we end up a lot of times where we're the only person that actually knows how busy we are from all these different places. And just trying to be open about, I'd like to do this role, but I've got all this going on with work right now, or vice versa. And so being openly communicating, I think, too, to try to make sure everybody understands maybe why they can't get the most of your attention right now.
That's great.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I have no idea if I'll be able to maintain it, but I'm trying.
There you go. Starts with a plan, right? And you keep reevaluating. It's like it's working, it's not working. Yeah. No, both of those are really good. I have a mentor that often says that, it's not possible to over communicate. So that second one I think is so important. It's like, if you have a lot going on or a deadline coming up, making sure the people on the home front know this is happening. Or if you have something that's happening on the home front, making sure the folks in the office or in the lab know that I'm going to be unavailable from blank to blank. So very important. And like you said before, we're all in this together. It's, from one working parent to another, I'd say just keep going, keep the fight, right? keep going. And if you don't have, for those that don't have kids or they don't have pets or anything like that, it's like, just trying to get to the gym or doing your own hobby. It's a challenge to balance all these things that are all important at the same time, it seems. So let's see, you've been involved in a number of different outreach and teaching workshops. Can you share some memorable experiences that you've experienced from these activities? Oh,
yeah. And this is hard to choose because especially the outreach side, right? It's always so memorable and impactful. There's one that stands out in particular that I'll mention on the workshop side. So I helped lead a national teaching workshop through USugar and the National Science Foundation. It was for Geotech faculty across the U.S. We had over 50 faculty participate, and the big theme of the all-day workshop was sharing teaching tools, like little tidbits we can share with each other to use in our classes, and online resources to update your class, but especially if you were going to be changing the way in which you were delivering content for your class. And this workshop happened on the Sunday short course day of GeoCongress in Minneapolis in February of 2020. You can just imagine the timing that we spend all day with all these Geotech faculty across the nation sharing online teaching resources for Geotech almost immediately before all education was forced to go remote. So that workshop, I think, turned out to be much more impactful than we originally envisioned because it was just so timely in the need and hopefully the usefulness of the faculty that were involved. So I do think about that one. That's always interesting timing to me.
For sure.
And then on the outreach side, the elementary, middle, high school outreach, I mean, everything we do is always so memorable and rewarding. Sometimes it's the joy the students have in doing whatever activity you're prepared or learning about geo. But I think one of the parts that I love the best, and so this isn't specific events, this is across events, is when the students are interested in you, right? And your job. Okay. And how'd you decide to become a geotech? And just talking with young people, it's just always so rewarding. And I find that it excites and like reinvigorates you about what you're doing in your own career. So I don't want to pick a particular outreach event because they're all special and memorable in their own way.
That's great. Sometimes you can, I think sometimes you can get so busy or so, into the weeds or the minutia or whatever you want to call it. You're so into it, you kind of forget why you went into this. So when you're talking to a young person and you're explaining, it's hard to explain what it is you do without smiling. If you do love it, and it's like, wow, I really do like what I'm doing. Okay, we'll finish the deadline, right? Yeah.
And usually they say, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, right.
Like we have work to do, right? It's
yeah, it's not like you said. It's not rolling off the kindergartner's tongue. It's like, I want to be a geo-environmental engineering professional. It's like, what is that?
Not yet. We'll get there.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's see. Before our break, final piece of advice you want to share with listeners. We have students all the way through professionals. We have graduate students, we have professors, we have all kinds of folks that are listening in, but to encourage them to consider professional service. Last piece of advice, then we'll go to our break.
Yeah, and we kind of touched on this already. This whole topic today is about professional service and how it's so valuable for your career, and don't get involved. But just, also be careful not to overcommit. There are many organizations where I said they're so eager to engage active committee members and leadership, like they're going to want you to get involved. But at the end of the day, for most people, it's volunteer service, right? Yeah. And you only have so much time. So it's important to still protect your time, I would say, for other responsibilities and family. And in doing that, just try to be strategic, right, about which professional service opportunities you take on. And maybe you need to ask a colleague or a mentor for advice on that. But I would caution not to just go sign up for everything after hearing this podcast.
That's great. All right. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back in just a minute and close this one out with Dr. Kristin Sample-Lord in our Career Factor Safety In segment. Stick around. All right, welcome back. It's time for our Career Factor Safety In segment. In geotechnical engineering, just like many disciplines of engineering, it's important to incorporate a factor of safety into your design. But what about incorporating a factor of safety into your career? Today, of course, we're speaking with Dr. Kristin Sample-Lord of Villanova University. So, Professor, you've already had a very successful career. And I'm not pushing you out of your career, right? You're still in your career. But when you look back at your career so far, what's one thing that you've implemented in your career to give yourself, let's call it a factor of safety in your career?
That's a great question. And it's also very, very hindsight, right? I didn't actually realize I was doing this until I was posed this question. I think I found over time that it was really important to not confine yourself to a predetermined career path or a very narrow view of your own expertise and skills, because our skill sets, they translate to other areas outside of geotech, even that we may not realize at first. So if we can creatively connect our existing expertise and skills to other areas and directions, like identify what those are and then foster those connections so we can branch out, that really builds in a lot more factor of safety in our career. So I would say, for example, my research for my PhD and then initially afterward, it was originally focused on geo-environmental containment applications. And that's mostly like flow and contaminant transport through soil. But then I realized over time, hey, I can leverage that expertise in flow and transport in porous media to many other applications in geotech, in water resources engineering and soil sciences, materials, and beyond, right? Because the fundamental science is the same. It's just the applications are really different. So that's let me kind of meet people outside of geotech and extend my network in that way, get involved in other projects that might not traditionally be considered geotechnical projects, so that, when I need to pivot in a research direction, I can do that. And it's really built in, I'd say, a factor of safety in my career path.
Excellent. Well, this has been great. Dr. Sample-Lord, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the great insights with us. You share great information. I know it's going to be advice that's going to be helpful for our listeners and those that are watching. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how can they find you? You're on social media? You have an email address you want to share? We can get that in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah, I am active on LinkedIn, but sometimes I don't always check the messages. So I'd say just email me. It's kristin.sample-lord@villanova.edu. And I would love to chat.
Excellent. We'll get that in the show notes. Thank you for coming on. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We would love to hear your feedback, comments, and/or questions. Please feel free to go to geotechnicalengineeringpodcast.com, where you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, we wish you the very best in all of your geotechnical engineering endeavors. Peace.